Weeks passed after the duel, and the silence that followed was louder than any battle cry across Orbit 9. The story of Lisa Carter and Kayla the Zenthari warrior spread like starlight through every corridor, and comm-channel beings who once dismissed humans as soft now watched them with quiet curiosity. Some even approached them in the mess halls asking simple questions about Earth, about human music, about why they smiled so often even when tired. Kayla did not return to her warship as expected. Instead, she requested temporary quarters on the station near the human delegation wing. At first, Lisa found it strange, but she did not question it. She simply nodded when they passed in the hall and sometimes left a cup of hot tea outside Kayla's. For a small human habit the warrior did not understand but accepted anyway. One evening, Kayla appeared at Lisa's doorway unannounced, her tall frame filling the frame, her violet eyes serious. "May I enter?" she asked. Lisa stepped aside. Inside, the room was simple. A bed, a desk, a small shelf of books, and a window showing the endless black of space with distant stars like scattered salt. Kayla ran a claw along the spine of one book, War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. "You read stories of war," she said. "Sometimes," Lisa said, "but mostly stories of people trying to find peace after war." Kayla turned the book over in her hands, then set it down carefully. "My people do not have such stories," she said. "We believe peace is weakness, a pause between battles. Maybe that is why your wars never end," Lisa said gently. Kayla looked at her sharply, but there was no anger, only thought. The next day, the two walked together through the station, not as warrior and human, but as something new, neither could name. They passed the hydroponic gardens where humans grew vegetables under artificial suns. Kayla stopped to watch a tomato ripen on the vine. "You grow your own food," she said, surprised. "We like to eat what we make," Lisa said. "It reminds us we are part of something alive." Kayla touched a leaf with the tip of her claw so gently it barely bent. "Zenthari world's food is synthesized, efficient, no waste, but no taste," Lisa said, smiling. Kayla tried a strawberry that day. Her first real fruit juice ran down her chin, and for the first time in memory, she laughed, a low rumbling sound that startled nearby birds in the gardens. Slowly, others began to notice the change in her. She no longer stood with arms crossed, glaring at passers-by. She asked questions. She listened. She even helped a group of young Vorn students fix their language translator when it malfunctioned. Meanwhile, Lisa received a message from Earth Command. They were proud of her but cautious. The Council was watching humanity more closely now, and any misstep could undo everything. "Do not become too close to them." The message read, "They are not like us," but Lisa knew that was the point. One afternoon, an alarm blared through the station, red lights flashing in the corridors. A cargo shuttle had malfunctioned. Near Docking Bay 7, its thrusters locked full power. It was drifting toward the main oxygen recycler. If it hit, the entire station could lose air and minutes. Panic spread. Security teams scrambled, but the shuttle was spinning too fast to board. Engineers shouted over comms that manual override was the only option. Someone had to get inside and shut down. The Kayla was already moving. She reached the bay in seconds, suited in emergency armor, her claws ready to tear through metal if needed. But as she prepared to launch herself into the void, Lisa appeared beside her, also in a suit. "You cannot go alone," Lisa said. "I do not need help. You might not. But the shuttle does. It needs two people. One to hold it steady, the other to reach the Kayla." Hesitated, then nodded. They launched together, tethered by safety lines. The shuttle loomed ahead, a dark shape tumbling end over end, sparks flying from its damaged hull. Kayla grabbed the outer frame first, her strength anchoring them both. Lisa pulled herself along the hull toward the access panel, her fingers working fast against the frozen bolts. Inside, the cockpit alarms screamed, the core temperature rising. "Hurry!" Kayla's voice came through the commie. "I'm trying." Lisa said, her hands shaking. Not from fear, but from cold. She got the panel open, reached inside, and yanked the manual cutoff. The thrusters died. Silence. They floated there for a moment, tethered to the dead shuttle stars all around. "You saved the station," Kayla said. "We did," Lisa replied. Kayla looked at her through their faceplates and for the first time saw not a fragile human but a partner. Back inside the station, medics checked them over both. "We're fine, just cold and tired." As they walked back to their quarters, side by side, a group of station children ran up to them. One small Krellian boy held out a drawing. It showed two figures, one tall and dark, one small and light, standing together against a big red ship for you. He said shyly. Kayla took it carefully, then knelt so she was at his level. Thank you, little one, she said. The boy beamed and ran off. That night Kayla sat in her room staring at the drawing, then at the book Lisa had lent her. The one about peace. Something was changing inside her. Not just her mind, but her heart. The next morning she requested a private audience with the Galactic Council elders. She said, standing tall before them, I ask to revise the Zenthari stance on non-warrior species. Murmurs filled the chamber. You were defeated in honorable combat, Elder Voss said bitterly. I was not defeated. Kayla said firmly. I was shown a different kind of strength, one that does not break, but bends, one that protects without destroying the humans. Do not seek to rule. They seek to connect. And in a galaxy torn by endless war, that is not weakness, that is wisdom. Elder Mireia studied her for a long time, then nodded slowly. Perhaps it is time we listened, not just with our ears, but with our spirits. News of Kayla's speech reached Lisa by lunchtime. She smiled but said nothing. She knew words were easy. It was action that mattered, and action came sooner than expected. A distress call arrived from the Outer Rim. A human science vessel, the Aurora, had been attacked by raiders near the Nebulon Belt. Its engines were down, its shields failing. It carried 23 souls, including 3 children. The council debated for hours. Some argued it was not their concern. Others said sending help would provoke the raiders, who were known allies of the Drakthar Empire, a brutal faction that despised non-warriors. Kayla stood. I will go, she said. Alone, Elder Voss scoffed. Not alone, Lisa said, stepping into the chamber. The room fell silent. You are not military. Lisa Carter. Elder. Mireia said gently. No, Lisa said. But I know the Aurora. I helped design its comm system. I know its crew. They are not soldiers, they are teachers mapping stars for schools on Earth. Kayla turned to her. You would come with me into battle. Not into battle, Lisa said, to bring them home. After a long pause, the council agreed they would send one ship, the Zenthari cruiser Shadowfang, fast, silent, and armed. But under one condition, Kayla would command it, and Lisa would serve as advisor. No weapons unless absolutely necessary. They launched within the hour. The journey took 2 days through asteroid fields and ion storms. Kayla piloted with fierce precision, while Lisa monitored signals and plotted safe routes. They spoke little, but the silence between them was comfortable, like old friends. On the 3rd day they found the Aurora adrift, its hull scarred but intact. No raiders in sight. Too quiet, Kayla muttered. Lisa scanned the area, then pointed to a faint energy signature behind a nearby moon. They are hiding, waiting for rescue ships to arrive, then ambush them. Kayla's eyes narrowed. Then she smiled, a rare sight. Then we do not give them a rescue ship. She said we give them a ghost. They powered down all non-essential systems, drifted silently toward the Aurora, using the moon's gravity to mask their approach. When they were close enough, Lisa sent a coded pulse through the Aurora's comms, a signal only human tech would recognize. Moments later, the Aurora's lights flickered on, then off twice. A response. They are ready, Lisa said. Kayla fired, the Shadowfang's grav tether latching onto the Aurora and pulling it close. Then she activated the cloak. Both ships vanished from sensors. The raiders waited another hour, then emerged from hiding, confused. Where did they go? One growled over open. Come right here, Kayla said. She dropped the cloak and fired a single warning shot across their bow. Not to destroy, but to scare. The raiders panicked, their leader shouting orders, but it was too late. The Shadowfang systems had already hacked their comms. Lisa had written the override code during the trip. You are surrounded. The Drakthar leader snarled. No, Lisa's voice came through their speakers, calm and clear. You are outmatched and outthought. Stand down or lose everything. For a long moment. Nothing happened then. The raiders powered down their weapons and fled. Kayla looked at Lisa. Amazed. You did that with words and a little code, Lisa said, grinning. They brought the Aurora back to orbit. 9 to cheers and tears. The children ran to Lisa, hugging her legs, their parents bowing to Kayla in gratitude. That night the council held a formal gathering. Not a celebration, but a recognition. Elder Maria stood before the assembled beings and spoke. Today we witnessed not the triumph of weapons, but the power of unity. A Zenthari warrior and a human woman faced danger not with rage, but with care. They did not seek to conquer. They sought to protect, and in doing so, they showed us a new path. She turned to Lisa, and Kayla, you have changed more than a mission. You have changed. Minds. Kayla stepped forward, then did something no Zenthari had ever done in public. She took Lisa's hand in hers. Not as a warrior, but as a friend. From this day forward, she said, my people will remember that strength is not only in the claw, but in the choice to spare, to help, to understand. Lisa squeezed her hand back. And we will remember that even the fiercest heart can learn kindness. Months had passed since the rescue of the Aurora, and the quiet ripple caused by Lisa and Kyla had grown into a wave across the galaxy. More species began sending envoys to Orbit 9, not just to trade or negotiate, but to learn how humans and Zenthari now worked side by side. Schools on neutral worlds added new lessons about empathy and cooperation, once seen as soft, now studied as strategy. The phrase water people began appearing in diplomatic texts, not as mockery, but as honoree. Et not. All welcomed this change. Deep in the Drakthar Empire, a council of warlords gathered in a fortress carved from black asteroid rock. Their leader, Vorlag, the Iron Maw, sat at the head of the table. His scarred face twisted in disgust as he watched a replay of Kayla bowing to a human. This is poison, he growled. The Zenthari were our greatest rivals now. They kneel to soft flesh. A lieutenant stepped forward. My lord, the humans spread their weakness like a virus. They call it peace, but it is surrender. In disguise, then we cut out the infection, Vorlag said, his eyes burning with cold fire. We show the galaxy what happens to those who forget the old ways. His plan was simple, brutal, and meant to shatter the fragile trust forming between species. He would strike not at a military target, but at a symbol, the Galactic Peace Summit, scheduled to be held on the neutral moon of Alaris. It would be the first time in centuries that representatives from over 200 species gathered, not to declare war, but to sign a charter of mutual aid and shared knowledge. Humans had helped draft it. Lisa Carter was named one of its lead mediators. Kayla would stand as Zenthari witness. Vorlag saw it as the perfect stage. His raiders would attack during the opening ceremony, not to kill but to humiliate. They would capture Lisa and Kayla, broadcast their defeat across every channel, and prove that kindness was just fear in disguise. The Drakthar fleet moved in silence, cloaked by stolen tech and fueled by Rajan. Alaris, the moon's surface, shimmered under twin suns. White pavilions rose from the silver grass. Delegates arrived in robes of every color, their weapons left at the gate as tradition demanded. Lisa walked among them, not in uniform but in simple clothes, her hands empty. Her smile warm. Kayla stood nearby, not in armor but in a ceremonial tunic stitched with threads of peace blue instead of battle red. She no longer carried claws openly, but kept them sheathed, a sign of restraint. They met near the central fountain, its water flowing in slow spirals. You feel it too, Lisa said quietly. Kayla nodded. The air is too still, like before a storm. But we are ready, not with weapons, Lisa said with truth. Kayla looked at her, then at the crowd of beings who had come not to fight but to listen, and for the first time she felt not the weight of war but the lightness of hope. Then the sky tore open. 3 Drakthar gunships dropped from orbit, their hulls black, their engines screaming. They fired stun pulses, not to destroy but to paralyze the crowd scattered in panic. The peace charter lay forgotten on its pedestal. Verlag descended in a cloud of smoke. His massive frame armored in spiked plates, he strode to the center of the plaza and laughed. Look at you, he boomed, the mighty Zenthari hiding behind a human child. You have forgotten what it means to be strong. Kayla stepped forward, but Lisa touched her armlet. Melissa walked alone toward Vorlag, her steps calm, her head high. You think strength is noise? She said. You think fear is power, but you are wrong. Vorlag sneered. You have no army, no weapons. What will you do? Biggie will show you what you cannot see, Lisa said. She turned to the crowd. Many were cowering, but some watched her with wide eyes. Then she did something no one expected. She began to speak, not in anger but in story. Once there was a forest, she said, and in it lived 2 trees. One was tall and hard, its bark thick, its roots deep. It laughed at the wind, saying, I will never fall. The other Was slender, flexible, its leaves soft, it bent with every storm, but never broke. One day a great fire came. The hard tree stood firm and burned to ash. The soft tree bent low. Let the flames pass over and lived to grow again. Vorlig spat. That is a child's tale, maybe, Lisa said. But it is true. Then Kayla stepped forward, not with claws, but with voice. I was that hard tree, she said. I believed only in battle. I mocked those who showed mercy until a human showed me that protecting life is harder than taking. The crowd stirred. Vorlag's face darkened. He raised his gauntlet to strike Lisa down. But before he could move, a voice crackled over every comm channel on the moon. This is Captain Rhea of the Free Alliance fleet. Stand down, Drakthar, or face consequences, Vorlag. Frozer Hia was not military. She was a former trader turned peacekeeper. Her fleet, made of volunteers from a dozen species, including Zenthari and human ship, shows she knew he did not ask. He looked around and saw something worse than weapons. The crowd was no longer afraid. They stood slowly at first, then together they formed a ring around Lisa and Kayla. Not to hide, but to shield. A Krellian elder stepped forward. Then a Vorn engineer, then a young Zenthari initiate who had watched the duel on orbit. 9, they did not raise fists, they raised hands. Vorlag stared at them as if seeing ghosts. You think this changes anything, he snarled. Yes, Lisa said. It shows you are alone. His raiders hesitated, their weapons lowering. In that moment, Rhea's fleet arrived. Not firing, but surrounding the gunships, their lights bright. Their presence calm. Vorlag knew he was beaten, not by force, but by unity. He turned and fled, his ships vanishing into the void. Silence returned to Elleris, then someone began to clap. Then another soon. The entire plaza echoed with sound. Not of war, but of respect. Elder Mireia stepped forward, tears in her ancient eyes. She took Lisa's hand, then Kayla's, and placed them together on the peace charter. Today, she said, we do not sign with ink, but with action. One by one, every delegate placed their mark, not with tools, but with touch. The charter was complete. Afterward, as the twin suns set, Kayla and Lisa walked along the ridge overlooking the valley below. Do you think it will last? Lisa asked Kayla. Watch the stars appear one by one. I do not know, she said. But for the first time, I believe it can. Back on orbit 9, changes deepened. The Zenthari High Council voted to open their warrior schools to non-Zenthari students, not to teach them to fight, but to teach them discipline, focus, and when not to fight. Human teachers joined them, sharing lessons in conflict resolution and emotional awareness. Lisa received a message from Earth, not a warning this time, but an invitation. Come home, they said. You have done more than represent us, you have redefined us. But Lisa knew her place was no longer just on Earth. She had become something new. A bridge not just between two worlds, but many. Kayla too had changed. She no longer saw herself only as a warrior, but as a guardian, not of territory, but of understanding. One evening they stood on the observation deck watching a fleet of ships depart, each carrying delegates to their home worlds, each carrying seeds of the new way. Do you ever miss the old days? Kayla asked. Lisa thought for a moment. I miss the simplicity, she said, but not the blindness. We thought we had to be hard to survive. But we were wrong. We survived because we care. Kayla nodded, then placed a small object in Lisa's hand. It was a Zenthari token carved from moonstone, shaped like a wave. My mother gave it to me before her last battle, she said. It means the strongest force flows, not crashes. Lisa held it close. Thank you. In the weeks that followed, more stories. Emerged a Drakthar defector, sought asylum not for safety, but to learn. He had seen the summit broadcast and could not unsee it. A group of raiders turned peacekeepers began patrolling trade routes. Not to steal, but to protect. Even Vorlag's own second-in-command sent a secret message asking how to begin. The galaxy was healing, not all at once, but piece by piece, and at the heart of it stood two women who had dared to believe that a duel could end. Not with a victor, but with a friendship. Years later, when new species joined the council, they were not asked how many enemies they had defeated, but how many hands they had held in peace. And whenever doubt crept in, someone would tell the story of the alien warrior who challenged a human and found not weakness, but wisdom. The small woman who stood unarmed before a storm and said, I see you. And of the day the galaxy learned that the most powerful weapon was not fire or steel, but the quiet courage to understand. That story never ended, it only grew. Years had passed since the peace summit on Alaris, and the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The Charter of Mutual Aid was no longer just a document. It was a living network of shared knowledge, trade, and protection. Humans and Zenthari stood at its heart not as rulers but as guides, their unlikely friendship. Now a symbol taught in schools across 100 worlds. Children drew pictures of Lisa and Kayla, not as warriors, but as gardeners planting seeds of understanding in barren ground. Yet peace was not a wall. It was a garden, and gardens needed tending on the outer rim of known space. A new threat stirred not from warlords or raiders but from silence. A region called the Void. Reach had gone dark. All signals ceased. No ships returned. Those who entered vanished without a trace. At first, the Council dismissed it as sensor failure, then as superstition. But when 3 entire colonies stopped responding, even the skeptics grew uneasy. Lisa was reviewing the data in her quarters aboard Orbit 9 now, her permanent home, when Kayla entered without knocking, a habit they had long accepted between them. "You feel it too," Kayla said, her voice low. Lisa did not look up from the screen, just nodded. "The silence is too perfect. It is not broken comms, it is something else." They had seen this before. Not in war, but in nature on Earth, there were places where all sound stopped. Not because nothing lived there, but because something waited. The Council debated for days. Some said, send drones, others said seal the region, declare it forbidden, but Lisa stood and spoke not as a diplomat but as a scientist. "If we close the door, we will never know what is behind it, and if it is danger, we must face it." "Not," Hidakela added. "If it is not danger but something lost, we must help in the end." The Council agreed to one ship, one mission. No weapons, no aggression, only observation. And if possible, contact. They chose the Wayfarer, a small vessel built by human and Zenthari engineers together, its hull lined with both shielding and listening arrays, its core powered by a quiet fusion drive that left no trace. It carried only 2 souls. Lisa and Kayla launched at dawn, the station's lights fading behind them as they entered the quiet. Dark for 3 days, they traveled through empty space. No comms, no debris, no energy signatures, just endless black and the soft hum of the ship's systems on. The 4th day, the sensors flickered. Something was there. Not a ship, not a station, but a structure. Vast and ancient, floating in the center of the void, it pulsed with a slow, steady rhythm like a sleeping heart. Lisa adjusted the scanners. "It is made of a material I have never seen before. It absorbs all signals. Light, sound, even thought waves." Kayla stood at the viewport, her violet eyes narrowed. "It feels old, older than my people, older than the Council." They approached slowly, the Wayfarer gliding like a leaf on still water as they drew near. The structure opened not with doors but with light, a soft blue path forming in the air leading inside. "Do we go in?" Lisa asked. "We came to understand," Kayla replied. "Not to fear." They suited up, not for battle but for caution, and stepped onto the light path. It carried them gently into the heart of the structure. Inside there was no gravity, no walls, no floor, just shifting patterns of light and sound that seemed to respond to their presence. Then a voice spoke, not in words but in feeling. It filled their minds not with language but with images. A world, burning, a people fleeing, a choice made in sorrow. The last of a race hiding not to escape but to protect. Lisa understood first. This is not a weapon. It is a vault. Kayla felt it too. They sealed themselves away because they feared what they carried would be used for war. The voice came again, clearer. "Now we are the Aelari. Once we shaped stars. Now we shape silence. We hold the last song of our world, and we wait for those who come not to take but to listen." Lisa stepped forward. "I am Lisa Carter of Earth. We come in peace." Kayla bowed as she had once done in the arena. "We seek no power, only truth." The light around them softened, then formed into a single glowing sphere. It floated toward Lisa and hovered before her. "Take it," the voice said. "But know this. Once shared, it cannot be unshared. It will change all who hear it." Lisa looked at Kayla. "This is not ours to keep," she said. Kayla nodded. "Share." Lisa reached out and touched the sphere. Instantly the song filled them, not music but memory. The joy of 1,000 generations, the pain of loss. the hope for something better. It showed how the Aelari had learned to live in balance with all things, how they healed broken worlds, how they spoke to stars and listened to silence. And then it was over. The structure began to fade, the light dimming, the path dissolving. "Thank you," the voice whispered. "You are the first in 10,000 years who did not reach for power but offered trust." The Wayfarer found itself back in normal space, the void reach empty once more, but not silent now. It hummed with a new energy. Faint but steady. On the journey home neither spoke much, they did not need to. The song lived inside them, a quiet fire that changed how they saw everything. When they returned to orbit, 9 the council waited, anxious and wary. "What did you find?" Elder Maria asked. Lisa held out her hand and let the song flow, not as sound, but as feeling. It passed from her to Kayla, to the elders, to every being in the chamber. Some wept, some fell to their knees, some simply stood in awe. For the first time in history, the entire council shared one thought, not of strategy or suspicion, but of wonder. The Aelari song spread from there, not through broadcasts, but through choice, one being sharing it with another only. When trust was earned, it became the most precious gift in the galaxy. Not because it gave power, but because it reminded everyone what they had forgotten. They were not alone. They were part of something vast and beautiful and worth protecting. In the months that followed, old enemies sat together, not to negotiate but to listen. Schools taught the song as history, and hope borders softened. Not because they were erased, but because they no longer mattered as much as connection. Lysa and Kayla continued their work, but differently now. They did not lead. They listened. They did not speak for others. They helped others find their own voice. One evening, as they stood on the same observation deck where they had watched fleets depart years before, Lisa turned to Kaylado. "You think the Aelari are still out there?" Kayla gazed into the stars. "I do not know, but I feel them in the quiet." Lisa smiled. "Yes, me too." They were older now, their steps slower, their hair touched with gray, but their eyes held the same fire, the same Kalma. Young human intern approached shyly, holding a datapad can. "I ask you something," she said. "Of course," Lisa said. "Why did you go into the void alone? Why not take a fleet?" "Because some doors only open for 2. Kayla replied. The intern nodded, then asked one more question. "What is the most important thing you have learned?" Lisa and Kayla exchanged a look, then spoke together. "Listen first." The intern left thoughtful. Later that night, as the station slept, Lisa received a message. Not from Earth, not from the council, but from a distant comm channel marked only with a single symbol. A wave. She opened it. It was from the Aelari. "You have kept the song alive." It read, "Others are waking because of you. The silence is ending." Lisa showed it to Kayla. "So it was never about us," Kayla said. "No," Lisa said, "it was about what we could help grow." They stood in silence, watching the stars, not as points of light, but as voices in a chorus slowly returning. And in that moment they knew their work was not done, but it was no longer theirs alone. The galaxy had learned to sing again, and that was enough. The song of the Aelari spread like roots through soil. Quiet but unstoppable, it did not shout, it whispered. And in that whisper whole worlds changed. Old grudges, softened trade routes once guarded with guns, now shared with guides, former enemies, sat together not to sign treaties but to share stories. And in the heart of it all, Lisa and Kayla moved not as leaders but as listeners, their presence alone a reminder that strength could be gentle, and wisdom could wear no armor. Yet peace was never a destination, it was a path, and paths needed. Guardians on the edge of Xanthari space, a distress call broke through the calm. Not from a colony or a ship, but from a memory, a signal buried deep in ancient archives, activated by accident or design. It came from a place long thought lost, the tomb moon of Vareth, a dead world where the Xanthari had once sealed away their darkest creation. A weapon born in shame during their blood wars. A machine that fed on fear and turned it into violence. Kayla felt the signal like a knife in her chest. She knew the stories her people did not speak of. Vareth, not out of fear but out of regret, we sealed it away. She told Lisa, her voice tight. We swore never to return, but someone has. Lisa said, studying the data. The signal is repeating in a pattern. It is not random. It is a warning. They brought the data to the council. Elder Miria listened in silence, then spoke. The tomb. Moon was locked with a Xanthari key, only a blood descendant of the original seal. Bearers can open it. Kyla looked down, her claws curling slightly. I am of that line, then you must go, Elder, Miria said. But not alone. Lisa placed a hand on Kyla's arm. I am with you. They took the Wayfarer again. Its hull now marked with symbols from a dozen worlds, gifts from those they had helped. The journey was short but heavy with memory as they neared Vareth. The moon hung dark and still, its surface cracked like old bones. Scans showed a single ship on the surface. Not Drakthar. Not human, but unknown. Someone beat us here, Kayla said. They landed in silence, suited not for combat but for caution. The air was thin, the ground cold beneath their boots as they approached the tomb entrance. A massive door carved with Zenthari runes glowed faintly. Kayla placed her palm on the center stone. The door recognized her blood and opened with a sigh of ancient air. Inside the tomb was not a vault, but a labyrinth, walls lined with mirrors, not of glass but of memory, each one showing moments of Zenthari history, battles, victories, but also tears, broken families, children hiding from war. This is not a weapon, Lisa whispered. This is a lesson. At the center of the labyrinth stood the machine, but it was not metal. It was alive, a pulsing core of dark energy fed by the mirrors around it, and standing before it was a figure cloaked in shadow. Forlig turned slowly, his eyes no longer burning with rage but hollow with grief. You came, she said, her voice rough. I knew you would. Kayla stepped forward. Why are you? Her Everlag laughed, but there was no joy in it, only pain. My daughter, she was on a peace mission near the Outer Rim. A rogue faction attacked her ship. They used old Drakthar codes to make it look like we ordered it. I tried to stop them, but I was too late. He looked at the machine. They say this thing can bring back the dead if you feed it enough. Pain. Lisa shook her head. It does not bring back the dead. It creates echoes twisted by sorrow. Vorlag's shoulders slumped. I just wanted to hear her voice one more time. Kayla did not speak for a long moment. Then she walked to the machine and placed her hand not on its core but on the nearest mirror. It showed a young Zenthari child laughing as Kayla taught her to balance on a beam. I lost someone, too, she said. My sister, she died in a border skirmish. I wanted revenge so badly I could taste it. But then I met Lisa, and I learned that holding on to pain only makes the world darker. Vorlag looked at her, then at Lisa. You would forgive me after what I did. Forgiveness is not ours to give, Lisa said. It is yours to earn. Kayla turned to the machine. This was built in a time when my people believed pain made us strong, but it only made us blind. We sealed it away. Not because it was powerful, but because it was a leash. She looked at Vorlaglet. Vorlag stared at the core, then slowly stepped back. Kayla took Lisa's hand, and together they touched the central mirror. Not with force, but with memory. They thought not of war, but of peace, of the summit on Ilaris, of the rescue of the Aurora, of the Aelari song filling their minds. The machine shuddered. The dark core softened, then dissolved into light. The mirrors faded not into nothing but into stars. The tomb was no longer a prison. It was a memorial. Vorlag fell to his knees, not in defeat but in release. Thank you, he whispered. They left Vareth not as victors but as healers. Vorlag returned to the Drakthar Empire not to rule but to rebuild. He disbanded his war fleets, opened schools, taught his people that strength could mean protection, not destruction. Back on Orbit 9, the council held no ceremony but a quiet gathering in the garden where Lisa and Kayla had once shared. A strawberry elder, Miria, placed a single white flower on the table. Today, we remember that even the deepest wounds can heal if we stop pouring salt on them. In the weeks that followed, more beings came, not with demands but with confessions. A Krellian admiral admitted to hiding food during a famine to gain power. A Vorn scientist confessed to stealing data that could have saved lives. They did not ask for punishment. They asked for help to make things right. Lisa and Kayla listened. They did not fix everything, they could not. But they showed that truth could be a bridge, not a weapon. One evening as they walked through the hydroponic gardens, now twice as large as before, filled with plants from 100 worlds, a young Zenthari initiate approached Kayla. Master, she said, I have a question. Kayla smiled. You may ask, why? Do you no longer wear your battle red? Because I found a better color, Kayla said. She pointed to Lisa's simple gray shirt, then to the green leaves around them. Peace is not the absence of color. It is the presence of life. The initiate bowed and left. Thoughtful Lisa squeezed Kayla's arm. You are a good teacher. I had a good student. Kayla replied. They sat on a bench watching the artificial sun set over the garden. Its light warm and steady. Do you ever miss the old ways? Lisa asked. Sometimes, Kayla said, but only like I miss winter. I know spring will come. Lisa nodded. I feel the same. A message arrived then, not urgent, not loud. Just a soft chime from the comm unit. It was from Earth. A school had named its new science wing after Lisa Carter. They asked if she would send a message for the opening. She recorded it simply. Never stop asking why. Never stop helping. Never stop believing that kindness is strength. She sent it, then turned off the screen later that night as the station slept. They stood, once more on the observation deck, the stars endless, the silence deep but no longer empty. Kayla spoke first. I used to think the universe was a battlefield. And now, Lisa asked. Now I think it is a conversation, and we are finally learning how to listen, Lisa smiled Yesin. The distance, a new ship approached, its lights blinking in the pattern of the Ailari song. A trader from a world that had once been silent, now singing. The galaxy was not perfect. It never would be, but it was trying. And that was more than enough. Lisa and Kayla stood together, not as hero and warrior, not as human and alien, but as friends who had walked through fire and found water on the other side. And in that quiet moment, under the watchful stars, they knew their story was not ending. It was becoming part of something larger. A tapestry woven from countless threads of courage, trust, and the simple choice to see each other clearly. That was the real victory, not in duels or battles, but in the daily decision to build rather than break, to heal rather than hurt, to listen rather than strike. And as long as even one being made that choice, the song would continue, and the stars would listen. The alien warrior requested a duel with a human. The outcome astonished her, and the cold quiet of Deep Space Orbit 9 hung like a silver ring around nothing, its corridors lit by soft blue lights and filled with beings from 1,000 worlds. Some walked on 6 legs, some floated on silent fields of energy. Some spoke in clicks and hums that no human ear could understand. But all of them shared one thing. They were powerful. They had earned their place among the stars through strength, cunning, or ancient lineage. And none of them had ever seen anything like the humans. Humans were new. They had only just reached the edge of known space. Their ships were small, their weapons seemed crude, and their bodies offered no natural defenses, no scales, no venom, no claws yet. They moved through the station with a calm that confused everyone. They asked questions, they listened, they smiled even when they did not understand, and worst of all, in the eyes of many, they refused to fight unless they had no other choice. Among those watching them closely was Kayla of the Zentari. Kayla stood taller than most beings on the station, her skin dark as volcanic glass, shimmering faintly under the lights. Her eyes glowed violet, and her long fingers ended in sharp curved claws. She wore no armor, only a simple black tunic marked with the scars of 100 duels. She was a warrior, not by choice, but by birth. The Zentari believed that true honor came only through combat, and that only those who could face death without flinching deserved respect. For weeks she had watched the humans from the shadows. She saw how they helped a stranded Krellian repair his damaged pod, how they shared food with a starving Vorn trader, how they stood between a frightened child and an angry guard even though they were outnumbered and outmatched. It made no sense to her. Why would a weak species risk itself for others, especially strangers? One evening she found her answer. He followed a human woman through the lower decks. The woman moved with quiet purpose. Her short brown hair tied back, her green eyes scanning the area, not with fear but with care. She stopped when she saw a young Zentari initiate, struggling to carry a heavy crate of plasma cells. The initiate was barely more than a child, his arms trembling under the weight. Without a word, the human woman stepped forward, took half the load, and walked with him to his destination. The initiate stammered, a thanks in broken standard. The woman just nodded and said, "You are welcome," in a voice so soft it barely carried. Kayla stepped out from the shadows. Then, "Why did you do that?" she asked, her voice low and sharp, like a blade being drawn. The woman turned unsurprised, as if she had known Kayla was there all along because he needed help. She said simply, "You gain nothing from it." "Maybe not," she said, "but he does, and that is enough." Kayla studied her. The human was small, barely reaching Kayla's shoulder, her frame slight, her hands unmarked by battle. Yet there was something in her eyes, a steadiness, a quiet fire that Kayla had only seen in the oldest Zinthari masters. "What is your name, human Lisa?" Carter. Kayla nodded. Once, then turned and walked away. But her mind burned with questions. The next morning she stood before the Galactic Council chamber. Her presence alone enough to silence the room. The elders looked up from their data slates, wary of the warrior's sudden appearance. "I request a duel," she announced. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. With whom? With a human. The room erupted in protests. "Humans are not warriors," Elder Voss said, his voice crackling with static from his mechanical throat. "They are diplomats. They do not understand honor combat. They understand helping a child carry a crate." Kayla replied, "They understand standing between danger and the innocent, if that is not honor. Then what is?" The elders exchanged glances. Finally, Elder Mireia, the oldest among them, raised a hand for silence. "Free well," she said. "But the duel will be non-lethal, held in the ceremonial arena with full dampeners active, no permanent harm. No death." Kayla bowed slightly. "I accept." The message reached Lisa that same afternoon. She was in the human delegation quarters reviewing star charts when the comm unit chimed duel request from Zinthari warrior Kayla accepted by council participation mandatory. Her aide gaped. "You cannot be serious. They will crush you." "Maybe," Lisa said. "But if I refuse, it tells the whole galaxy that humans run from challenges. Even fair. Run. But you have no training." "I have something better," she said. "I have understanding." The day of the duel. The arena filled quickly. Beings from every corner of the station came to watch, some out of curiosity, others out of pity. A few placed bets on how many seconds Lisa would last. Kayla entered first, her steps echoing like war drums. She wore her ceremonial tunic, the one marked with the sigils of her victories, her claws polished to a deadly shine. She stood at the center of the ring and waited. Then Lisa walked in. She wore no armor, only her standard gray uniform, her hands empty, her expression calm. The crowd fell silent, not out of respect but out of disbelief. "You are either very brave or very foolish," Kayla said as Lisa stopped a few feet away. "Maybe both," Lisa replied. The gong sounded. Kayla moved instantly, a blur of speed, her right hand slashing toward Lisa's neck, not to kill but to pin, to show dominance. But Lisa did not retreat. She stepped forward into the strike, turning her body so the claw passed just beside her shoulder. She used Kayla's own momentum to shift the warrior's balance, and with a gentle push on Kayla's elbow, she sent her stumbling past. The crowd gasped. Kayla recovered fast. Spinning with a snarl, she launched a sweeping kick aimed at Lisa's legs, meant to knock her down. But Lisa dropped to one knee, rolled under the arc of the kick, and came up behind Kayla. Before the warrior could turn, Lisa tapped her on the back, then stepped away. 2 breaths. "Kayla," growled. Lisa said nothing. The third attack came with full force. Kayla charged like a storm, her claws outstretched to grab Lisa's arms and hold her still, a move that had ended 100 duels before. But Lisa did not resist. She dropped low again, and as Kayla passed over her, she struck upward with the heel of her palm, hitting the soft spot just below the warrior's ribs, not hard enough to injure, but enough to steal her breath for a heartbeat. Kayla staggered, coughing, her vision swimming. For a moment, when it cleared, Lisa stood before her again, calm, steady, breathing slow and even. The second gong sounded. The round was over. Silence. Kayla stared at the human woman, her chest rising and falling, not from exhaustion but from shock. "You did not fight," she said. "I did," Lisa said. "But not the way you expected. I studied your people. I know your strengths and your limits. Your speed is unmatched, but your balance is high. Your attacks are powerful, but once you commit, you cannot change direction. Quickly, I did not try to beat you. I tried to move with you." Kayla's eyes narrowed, then slowly something shifted in them. Not anger, not shame, but wonder. "You fight like water," she said. "Water does not break against the stone, it flows around it." "Exactly," Lisa said. From the observation deck, Elder Mireia leaned forward and spoke into the comm. "Cancel the next round. The duel is concluded." But Kayla raised her hand. "Wait." She turned to Lisa and did something no Zinthari had ever done in front of outsiders. She bowed her head low, her claws folding against her chest, a sign of deep respect. "You have shown me a truth I did not believe possible," she said, "a warrior who wins not by force, but by seeing the other clearly." "That is true." Strength, Lisa smiled softly. "We call it empathy." Kayla straightened her expression, thoughtful. For the first time in her life, she felt not pride but humility. The crowd remained silent, not because they were bored, but because they had witnessed something rare. Not a battle, but a revelation. As Lisa walked out of the arena, beings parted before her, not out of fear but out of newfound respect. And Kayla watched her go, knowing that her world had just grown larger than she ever imagined. The galaxy had always believed strength was measured in claws and fire. But today it learned that sometimes the strongest thing a being can do is to stand unarmed before a storm and say, "I see you." And that changed everything.